My name is Claire Gandy. I'm 38 years old, and this is the night I realized the man I planned to marry wasn't planning a future with me. He was planning a takeover. If you'd looked at us an hour earlier, you'd think we were just another couple finalizing last-minute wedding details. 3 weeks until the big day. Invitations mailed. Seating charts half done. A $28,000 venue deposit already paid. By me, in my name, because everything about our wedding had ended up flowing through my accounts. Normal stress, normal pre-wedding chaos. And then Liam Chen, my fiancé, the man I thought I knew, sat across from me at our walnut dining table, spine straight, posture perfect, face unnervingly calm. That's what scared me. Liam was expressive by default, loud when he was excited, animated when he was nervous, dramatic when he was upset. But tonight he had the posture of a man delivering a prepared speech. A rehearsed speech, his mother's speech. He folded his hands, tilted his head slightly, and said, in a voice too steady to be spontaneous, "Claire, the wedding can't happen unless my name is added to your condo and all major assets. Joint ownership, everything. Otherwise, we're not walking down that aisle." It was surreal. This wasn't a conversation. It was an ultimatum. Smooth, calculated, delivered like it was the most reasonable thing in the world. And it hit me like a punch to the chest. Because my condo wasn't just a property. It was 7 years of sacrifice. Working double shifts, living in a studio the size of a broom closet, driving a car whose AC died every summer, skipping vacations for nearly a decade. I bought that waterfront place long before Liam even existed in my life. It was mine, my journey, my backbone. And now, with his mother Patricia whispering poison in his ear for months, Liam had decided that our marriage equaled his legal claim to my life's work. He wasn't emotional, wasn't panicked. He didn't even look conflicted. He looked certain, like this was a business negotiation, like my assets were part of the bridal package. His eyes, normally soft, warm, almost boyish, had turned metallic, a cold, reflective silver, like coins. Patricia's influence, it was always Patricia. She'd been hinting for months that her poor Liam needed protection, that marriage was dangerous if the man didn't secure his rights early, that women always have backup plans. Funny. Coming from a woman who treated every wealthy partner her son dated as a potential retirement plan. Liam placed a printed list on the table, bullet points, deadlines, items to notarize. He'd prepared this. My jaw tightened. Something inside me snapped into perfect clarity. I wasn't going to beg, plead, argue, or cry. I simply picked up my phone. Liam relaxed, thinking I was giving in. That was his first mistake. I scrolled to Harborview Estate, our venue, tapped the contact, and pressed the call button deliberately loud enough for him to hear. His eyebrows twitched. "Hello," I said to the coordinator, my voice steady. "This is Claire Gandy. I need to cancel the wedding reservation under my name and transfer the $28,000 credit toward a solo cabin on the Nordic Star Mediterranean cruise. 3 weeks, single occupancy." Liam's face cracked. Confusion, then horror, then full-blown panic washed over him. Claire, what are you doing?" I held up a hand, signaling him to wait while the venue confirmed the conversion. "Yes," I replied politely into the phone. "I understand the credit becomes non-refundable once transferred. That's exactly what I want." When I ended the call, the room was silent. I looked him dead in the eye. "You wanted security, Liam. I'm securing my assets, from a man who gave me an ultimatum 3 weeks before our wedding." His mouth opened and closed, but nothing came out. Patricia taught him manipulation, not how to recover when it failed. "You canceled our wedding," he whispered. "I canceled the venue," I corrected. "The wedding is suspended until you stop treating our relationship like a merger agreement." His face twisted. "You'd rather lose $28,000 than put my name on something we're supposed to share?" "No," I said calmly. "I'd rather lose $28,000 than lose myself." For the first time since he issued the ultimatum, he looked scared. Not for me, not for us. For what he'd lose access to. I stood up. "You have 1 week to decide if you want a partner or a portfolio. I'm not marrying a man who sees property before he sees me." He didn't follow me. He didn't speak. He just sat there, the perfect posture collapsing inch by inch, like a puppet whose strings had been cut. I walked to my home office, closed the door quietly, and exhaled for the first time in what felt like hours. Behind me, the condo, my condo, was filled with a crushing silence, and it hit me how dangerously close I had come to losing everything. Not the wedding. Not the money. Myself. I sank into my office chair and whispered to no one. Let me back up, because this nightmare didn't start tonight. It was a slow-motion crash I didn't see until the moment I hit the ground. Before Liam Chen became the man who issued ultimatums and legal threats, he was someone I genuinely believed I could build a future with. I didn't fall for him quickly. I wasn't naive or impulsive. I had built my life slowly, deliberately, one responsible decision at a time. And he slipped into that life so naturally that I never noticed how carefully he'd positioned himself. We met 2 years ago at a corporate networking mixer, one of those events where everyone pretends to care about collaboration opportunities just to justify drinking overpriced wine out of plastic cups. I was trying to decide if I could leave early without being rude when he appeared beside me. "You look like you'd rather be organizing spreadsheets," he joked. I laughed because it was true. He laughed because he was confident it was true. That confidence was disarming. Our first date was at a Mediterranean restaurant he chose. He was charming, in a curated, thoughtful way. Just enough vulnerability to appear genuine, just enough polish to seem admirable. He listened to my stories, asked questions that made me feel interesting, and didn't recoil when I mentioned how carefully I managed my finances. By the third date, he had learned how to make me feel emotionally safe without threatening my independence. At least that's how it felt then. 6 months later, when his lease ended, I suggested he move in with me. It felt practical, even romantic. We were spending every night together anyway, and he was dealing with a noisy apartment, unreliable roommates, and rising rent. Inviting him felt like the kind of natural next step adults take. But something shifted the moment he brought his belongings through my front door. At first, it was subtle, playful comments, nothing more. "Our living room could use a bigger rug. Maybe we should replace these kitchen lights. This place will feel more like ours once we fix a few things." The word ours didn't bother me, not then. But it began to evolve. Once my name is on the deed, after we both legally own the condo, my mom says couples should handle property transfers before marriage. I brushed these comments aside because his tone was always casual, light, harmless. Eventually, he proposed during a weekend getaway at a vineyard. It was beautiful. Sunset, soft lighting, the kind of romantic atmosphere people pay thousands to recreate in movies. I said yes with tears in my eyes. He posted the photo online before we'd even paid the bill. Patricia, his mother, congratulated us with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. She hugged me too tightly, then whispered, "I'm glad my son found someone stable. Someone who won't leave him vulnerable." I wasn't sure what she meant. I should have asked. What I didn't realize then was that Patricia had turned financial fear into doctrine years earlier. After being cut out of her late husband's will, she decided no man should ever go into marriage without legal protection. She carried that philosophy like a shield and raised her son to carry it too. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, Liam changed. A conversation about guest lists drifted into a comment about joint bank accounts. A discussion about the officiant turned into an anecdote about a coworker whose fiancé added him to her property before the wedding. While choosing a cake flavor, he casually mentioned how normal couples share everything long before the ceremony. It was like talking about the wedding always required a detour through the land of legal ownership. There were moments when I saw traces of his old self, warm, affectionate, playful. But more often, I saw Patricia's shadows behind him, guiding his words, shaping his expectations, planting seeds of entitlement. Then, one night, while we lay in bed, he said softly, "Marriage means sharing everything. Don't you want that?" There was something rehearsed in his voice, something that didn't belong to him. When I asked if this was truly what he believed or what his mother believed, he went silent. Deeply, uncomfortably silent. As the wedding approached, the subtle pressure became a constant background noise. No matter the topic, napkins, venue decor, catering, vows, it always circled back to money, ownership, assets. And every time we talked about the future, it felt a little less like a partnership and a little more like a negotiation. Then came the ultimatum, cold, calm, delivered like a legal clause rather than a heartfelt concern. 3 weeks before our wedding, he told me he wouldn't marry me unless his name was added to my condo and all major assets. Not suggested, not requested, demanded. That night, after I canceled the venue and transformed the $28,000 deposit into a solo cruise, he looked at me as if I had broken rules he assumed I would follow. Rules he thought I didn't know existed. He didn't argue, didn't explain, didn't reach for me. Instead, at around 3 a.m., I heard him quietly opening drawers, picking things up, putting them down. His footsteps were slow, deliberate, almost methodical. I pretended to be asleep as my heart hammered against my ribs. By sunrise, he was gone. I thought he needed time, space, perspective. But I didn't know, couldn't imagine, that he had gone straight to Patricia. And together, they were drafting a response so manipulative, so calculated, that it would make the ultimatum look like a warm-up. A response that wouldn't come through conversation or apology, but through a letter, with a law firm's name at the top. Liam stayed gone for 2 full days after the ultimatum. No texts, no calls, not even a passive-aggressive emoji. The silence felt wrong. Not the silence of someone reflecting, but of someone preparing. Patricia's kind of silence. On the 3rd afternoon, while I was at work, an email arrived in my inbox from a law firm I'd never heard of, Whitmore and Associates. My stomach tightened before I even opened it. Something inside me already knew. The subject line read, "Notice regarding property rights, Liam Chen." The air went cold around me. I clicked the attachment. It wasn't a conversation starter. It wasn't clarification. It wasn't a negotiation. It was an accusation. The letter claimed that because Liam had lived in my condo for 18 months, paid contributory household expenses, and invested significant emotional and logistical labor into our relationship, including wedding planning, he was entitled to immediate co-ownership of my property. My property. The condo I'd bought 7 years before he ever walked into my life. They demanded that I transfer 50% ownership of the condo to his name within 7 days. They referenced equitable distribution as if we were divorcing after a decade of marriage instead of dissolving an engagement built on pressure and manipulation. They also implied he was entitled to half of my investment accounts, my retirement savings, my long-term portfolio. I read the letter twice, then a 3rd time, each pass making my heart beat harder, sharper. Not because I believed their claims had legal merit. Deep down, I knew they didn't, but because of what the letter represented. This wasn't Liam being misguided. This wasn't his insecurity talking. This wasn't even Patricia whispering in his ear. This was strategy. Cold, calculated strategy. They were trying to scare me into compliance. I called Nathan, my attorney, without hesitating. I didn't cry. I didn't shake. My voice didn't even waver. The moment he answered, I said, "They're coming for my condo." There was a pause, then his calm, steady voice. "Read it to me." I did. Every word. He didn't interrupt until the end. "They have 0 standing," he said immediately. "He's not a spouse. He has no legal claim. This is intimidation, not law." "Then what do we do?" I asked. "We respond," he said. "Hard." Within 2 hours, Nathan had drafted a counter letter so sharp it felt surgical. A cease and desist order informing them that their claims were baseless, that their intimidation attempt bordered on harassment, and that any further demands would result in legal consequences. Then came the twist Nathan suggested, the strategic kill shot. "If they want to claim Liam contributed financially by living in your home," he said, "we will treat him like a tenant." He calculated 18 months of fair market rent for my waterfront condo, $300 per month, $57 total, minus the approximate $4,800 he'd contributed to utilities and groceries, a remaining balance of $52,800. Nathan attached that invoice to the cease and desist. "Will you ever collect that?" I asked. "No," he said, "but it destroys their argument. It reframes him as a guest, not an equal owner." It was brutal. It was clean. It was exactly what needed to be done. I left work early that day. When I walked into my condo, I froze. Liam was there. So was Patricia. Suitcases were lined along the bedroom doorway. Drawers were open. Clothes thrown into piles. Patricia was directing the process like a general preparing troops. Liam looked startled when he saw me. Patricia did not. She turned slowly, eyes cutting into me like she'd been preparing for this moment. "You coward," she spat. "You sent lawyers after my son, after everything he's done for you. Everything he's done for me. Wedding stress. Ultimatums. Financial demands. Manipulation. Yes, a true martyr." I didn't raise my voice. "I responded to the letter your lawyer sent," I said evenly, "the one demanding half my assets." "Don't you dare," she snapped. "He gave you 18 months of commitment. 18 months of partnership." My laugh came out sharper than I intended. Partnership doesn't involve legal threats. Patricia's face flushed red. "You isolated him. You controlled everything. Now you're throwing him out." "He's leaving," I corrected, "with what he came with. His clothes, his belongings, his name, and nothing more." Liam finally spoke, quiet, almost defeated. "Claire, you didn't have to escalate it." I looked at him, really looked. "This isn't escalation," I said. This is me matching what you started. He dropped his gaze. Patricia stepped toward me, finger pointed like a blade. You think you won, but you haven't seen what happens when you humiliate my family. The threat hung in the air, heavy and dense. I'm not humiliating your family, I replied. I'm protecting myself from it. I watched them finish packing. Watched Patricia shove his last suitcase into her car. Watched Liam climb inside without looking back. When I closed the door, the silence that followed was a different kind of silence than the one after the ultimatum. It wasn't fear, it wasn't sadness. It was the beginning of something new. But it didn't last long, because 24 hours later, they escalated again. Not with words, not with demands, but publicly and viciously. The attack didn't come through Liam. It didn't come through Patricia. It came through social media. I woke the next morning to a dozen missed calls, unread messages, and notifications stacked on top of each other like falling dominoes. At first, I thought someone had died. Then I saw Liam's name trending in my notifications. My stomach dropped. I opened the first message from a coworker. Are you okay? Is what he posted true? True? The word hit me like a cold splash of water. I opened the link. There it was, a long, emotional post from Liam's account. A selfie of him looking devastated, head in hands, captioned with an essay written to make me look like the villain of the century. He claimed I'd blindsided him, that I'd stolen the $28,000 wedding deposit, that I'd thrown him out with nowhere to go, that I manipulated him, controlled him, emotionally abused him, isolated him, made him feel unsafe. He never mentioned the ultimatum, never mentioned his demand for half my assets, never mentioned the lawyer letter I received, never mentioned that the deposit was in my name from my account. He painted himself as a heartbroken, financially vulnerable man betrayed by the woman he trusted. It was masterful in its manipulation. He didn't call me names, didn't accuse me of cheating. No theatrics, just heartbreak, fear, victimhood, the kind of performance that draws sympathy by the gallon. The comments were brutal. You dodged a bullet by leaving her. Imagine stealing your partner's wedding money. She isolated him and then kicked him out? What a controlling woman. She sounds emotionally abusive. She used him. She ruined him. People I barely knew were tagging me, judging me, condemning me, and Liam, safe behind his screen, was letting them. I sat there reading comment after comment, feeling something inside me twist into a tight, burning knot. Not sadness, not even anger, a kind of cold, perfect clarity. This was no accident. This was no emotional outburst. This was retaliation. I forwarded the post to Nathan with a single sentence. What do we do? He called within minutes. It's defamation, he said. Every word designed to damage your reputation. But suing publicly would be expensive and messy. It could drag on for months. What's the alternative? I asked. He hesitated. Tell the truth. And that was it. No emotion, no venom, no theatrics. Just documents. That evening, I sat down at my dining table, the same table where Liam delivered his ultimatum, and wrote a response. Not a rant, not a defense, not an attack. Just facts. I explained that Liam ended the engagement by issuing a 1-week ultimatum demanding half ownership of my premarital condo and complete access to all my major assets. I explained that his family's lawyer sent a letter demanding 50% of my property despite us not being married. I explained I legally repurposed the wedding deposit, which was in my name alone. Then I attached everything. Screenshots of the ultimatum texts, the lawyer demand letter, the cease and desist Nathan drafted, my deed showing I bought the condo years before meeting him, the venue confirmation showing the deposit was under my name alone. No insults, no commentary, just evidence. I hit post and set my phone down. The reaction was immediate. People who had supported Liam deleted their comments. Others turned on him instantly. New comments flooded in. Wait, he demanded half her condo before the wedding? His mom clearly put him up to this. The letters prove everything. This is insane. She dodged the bullet, not him. How dare he try to steal her assets? He lied publicly. That's disgusting. By the next morning, Liam's post was gone, vanished, deleted like it never happened. But the screenshots stayed, because the internet never forgets. Around lunchtime, my phone buzzed with a number I didn't recognize. A single text message. You've humiliated my son publicly. You'll regret this. Patricia. I stared at the message, feeling absolutely nothing. I typed back. I regret not seeing the truth earlier. Don't contact me again. Then I blocked her. Then I blocked Liam. And for the first time in months, I took a deep breath that didn't hurt. The weekend passed in a strange, quiet way. I cleaned the condo, did laundry, cooked a small dinner, sat on my balcony watching the harbor lights flicker against the water. Peace wasn't loud. It wasn't triumphant. It was the absence of chaos. But peace can be deceptive, because just as I began settling into the quiet, reality hit me. The wedding was canceled, the relationship was dead, and my life, my actual life, was finally, blessedly mine again. A week later, I boarded the cruise. A 3-week voyage through the Mediterranean. A trip I had originally planned as a honeymoon. Now it was something else entirely. A rebirth. I didn't know it then, but on that ship, thousands of miles away from Patricia's manipulation and Liam's entitlement, I would learn the truth that tied everything together. The truth about why Patricia raised her son to treat love like a financial transaction. The truth about the will she never received. The truth that made everything suddenly make sense. And the truth Liam would eventually try to use to crawl back into my life. The cruise felt like stepping into a different version of myself, one I hadn't met in years because I'd been too busy trying to hold a relationship together while someone else quietly dismantled it. My cabin overlooked the water. Every sunrise was a soft, shimmering gold. Every night, the sea hummed beneath the ship like a living thing. I slept better than I had in months, maybe years. The first morning, I sat on the balcony with a cup of coffee, watching the sunlight stretch across the horizon, and felt something strange bubbling up inside me. Relief. Not joy, not excitement. Just relief. A quiet, steady release of a weight I didn't realize had been crushing me. Every day was mine. Every hour was mine. Nobody hovering, nobody manipulating, nobody trying to turn my life into their retirement plan. I explored Barcelona alone, wandering through narrow streets that smelled of bread and citrus. In Marseille, I spent an entire afternoon sitting by the water, eating grilled fish and letting the sea breeze untangle the last knots of tension in my body. In Rome, I hired a cynical, hilarious Italian guide who talked about ancient emperors cheating on each other like it was fresh gossip. When she asked why I was traveling alone, I told her the short version. Her eyes sharpened. "He wanted your house," she said simply. It wasn't a question. "It seems that way." She nodded. "You escaped." Good. Not all people do. I didn't expect a stranger to understand so immediately. Somehow, that made it real in a way it hadn't been before. I met other solo travelers, divorced, widowed, heartbroken, healed, healing. A retired teacher from Canada. A software engineer from Seattle who'd left a 10-year relationship. A woman from Australia who toasted all of us one evening. "To choosing ourselves," she said, raising her glass. And for the first time, I felt like someone had put words to what I'd done. I chose myself. Not my condo, not my savings, not my independence. Myself. Halfway through the trip, I received a message request on social media from someone I vaguely recognized. Julie, one of Liam's old college friends. She'd been at our engagement party, quiet but observant. Her message was short. "Can we meet when you get back? I think you deserve to know something." I didn't respond at first. I didn't want more drama. But curiosity, no, intuition, lingered in the back of my mind. 3 weeks passed like a soft dream, and when I finally flew home, the condo felt different. Not empty, not lonely, just mine again. A few days later, I agreed to meet Julie at a small cafe downtown. She arrived looking nervous, twisting her napkin between her fingers. "I should have told you sooner," she said. "I just didn't realize how far it had gone." "Far how?" I asked. She hesitated, then exhaled sharply. "It wasn't Liam's idea," she said. "It never was. Everything he did, the pressure, the property talk, the ultimatum, it was all coming from Patricia." My jaw tightened, but I stayed silent. Julie continued. "Patricia wasn't just manipulative, she was terrified. When her husband died 12 years ago, he changed his will at the last minute and left her nothing, not a cent. Everything went to Liam and his sister. Patricia always believed he betrayed her, that men betray women with paperwork. I felt something inside me shift, a puzzle piece falling into place. She told Liam, Julie said, lowering her voice, that if he didn't secure assets before marriage, his future spouse would ruin him, the same way she thinks she was ruined. Trauma repurposed as strategy. Fear weaponized as love. Paranoia disguised as protection. And Liam believed her? Completely, Julie said. She raised him on that fear. She taught him that partnership means securing assets, that marriage is a business contract, that if your name isn't on someone's property, you're disposable. Suddenly, everything made sense, not just the ultimatum, but the coldness behind it. The scripted calm, the legal letter, The way he looked at my condo like it was part of his future, not mine. Julie looked at me, guilt shadowing her expression. He cared about you, she said softly, but Patricia was louder, and he always listened to her first. Still, that didn't excuse what he'd done. He was an adult. He'd made choices. He'd chosen control over trust. He'd chosen intimidation over communication. He'd chosen to treat love like acquisition. Understanding the reason behind betrayal doesn't make betrayal less real. A week after meeting Julie, I received a text from an unfamiliar number. When I opened it, everything inside me went perfectly still. Claire, it's me. Please don't block this. I know I made mistakes. I was scared. My mom made everything worse, and I listened when I shouldn't have. I miss you. Can we talk? Just talk? He wanted a conversation, closure, maybe forgiveness, maybe a second chance. But as I stared at his message, all I could think of was the night he sat across from me at the dining table, posture perfect, voice calm, and asked for half of everything I'd ever worked for. The legal letter, the social media smear campaign, the manipulation, his silence when Patricia spoke for him, the entitlement in his eyes. All of it came back like a cold wave. I typed nothing. I didn't rage, I didn't cry, I didn't explain. I simply blocked the number, not out of anger, not out of bitterness, out of clarity. Because sometimes the strongest closure you can give someone is none at all. I closed my phone, set it face down on the table, and took a long, steady breath. My life was finally mine again. Everything ahead of me, new choices, new peace, new beginnings, belonged to me. And this time, no one would have the power to take any part of it away.